Hi, today we're here in right outside of Kleinfeltersville. We're here at the Albright Memorial Chapel, which is named after Jacob Albright. He is buried here. I'm really honestly not sure where, but we'll talk a little bit about him. And at some point I want to try to do a video on Jacob Albright and John Walter combined, go down to Myerstown, to where Albright College, which is named after him, go visit that, and a few other places I'd like to visit as well, and talk a little bit about the history. I sort of was a little off my game today because I was trying to do a couple different videos. I'm just not all there today. I'm just tired and a little beat, so it sort of is what it is. I think I'm going to go down into Schaeferstown then and take some pictures for Instagram, maybe do some kind of little bit of video there as well. I'd like to also visit the grave of Alexander Schaefer, who Schaeferstown is named after. But this is a reasonably old cemetery. I believe this church was built in 1850. This originally was the Becker family cemetery, but then it changed to have community and that type of stuff as well. Union would be Reformed, and like maybe some Lutheran and some Methodist would all be buried here. So he was Jacob Albright lived, I believe it was 1759 to 1808. He actually served as a drummer boy in the Revolutionary War, and he was the co-founder of the Evangelical Association with John Walter, which we just put a video out, I believe, today about him, where he's buried over at Mount Nebo Cemetery. And Jacob Albright was a pretty unique guy. Like, he had and I believe this is it right here. That's pretty cool. It's probably not the original stone, because it does look slightly newer, that they probably replaced it and made it exactly like the other one. But it was Jacob Albright from 1759 to 1808. He actually was originally in a Lutheran church, but he and his wife lost 2 children, and he was a bit dismayed about how the Lutheran church at that time dealt with death. Here's this is probably the original stone, but he wasn't happy with how that was dealt with, so he felt that the deaths should be dealt with in a more compassionate manner. You'll notice as well, there's quite a few of these stones that are laying down in the ground all throughout here, so I'm assuming there's a Moravian influence here as well. And this is probably, like, this is where, I think this is the Becker family, so this is probably the original. Yeah, this is Becker. This is probably, this section right here is probably the Becker plot, and they might have been Moravians before they switched over to Evangelical Association, because somewhere in this region is the George Becker house. I think it's on some kind of registry, I'm not sure, but it is a very historic place. It is private property. But that's where Jacob Albright actually died. He was coming back from Linglestown. I believe he lived in Ephrata at the time, and he was trying to make his way back from preaching and hadn't been doing well for a while, and fell ill to the point where he stopped here in Kleinfeltersville at his friend George Becker's house, which I believe George Becker was also the brother-in-law of John Walter, and they eventually created this beautiful, beautiful chapel here in Jacob Albright's honor. But he had a view that he felt that the church should be more involved in helping people to sort of recover their parishioners, and he was upset that they hadn't done that. So he eventually found a home in the at that time it was the Methodist Church, and he really loved it there. And I guess he rose the rank of bishop, but never really truly accepted that role, because he wound out leaving the Methodist Church then and creating the Evangelical Association, because he wished to minister to the communities of German immigrants, which a lot of them still only spoke primarily German. That was one thing John Walter struggled with, and the Methodist Church would not allow him to preach in German. and he therefore started that church for that reason. And they were both him and John Walter felt that the church should be more compassionate, more involved in their parishioners' lives, and helping them through especially times of struggle. So that's what he was about. He was a beloved individual. Eventually the Methodist Church, or I guess it was the Evangelical Association, is the one that started Albright College in, I believe, 1856. And it stayed there in Myerstown where it was founded until I think about 1929. And they had merged with a number of other schools, one of them being the Schuylkill Seminary, which the Schuylkill Seminary had actually originally been in Fredericksburg and was paid for. The building on College Hill is just on the hill above the one chicken factory in Fredericksburg. He had John Lick, the son of James Lick, had paid for that facility. Eventually it moved to Reading, and when they merged with the Schuylkill Seminary, they decided to move Albright College to Reading, where the Schuylkill Seminary was. They felt it was a better location. And eventually the ECC Church, the Evangelical Congregational Church, took over where Albright College had been in Myerstown and made their seminary, which is there till today. So a number of the buildings that were there originally aren't there anymore, but pretty cool place. We'll go there at some point when we do a video on Jacob Albright, and then I'll do it more focused just on him. But I want to go through a cemetery. But this is pretty cool. Like these stones, like I said, this is a very Moravian treatment. Maybe the stones just fell over, but the Moravians felt everybody's equal in death, and all through this area you see these stones sitting here. But this was originally the Becker Cemetery, and because they were so close, they buried Jacob here since he passed away right here in Kleinfeltersville, wherever the George Becker house. I'm assuming it's reasonably close. Where it is, I'm not really sure. But we're going to go through the cemetery. We're going to check this out. Once again, he was a drummer boy in the Continental Army. So he did serve in the Revolutionary War. But there is, this is the older part of the cemetery. But like I said, it had originally been a family plot for the Becker family, and eventually became known as the Albright Memorial Chapel. I believe there's over 300 some memorials that are actually here. But yeah, I've never stopped here before. This is another one of those places. I lived in Myerstown for a long time, which is about 5 miles down the road, but every single one of these cemeteries is very unique. And it's just sort of everything sort of mixed together here. We're going to go up through here, check out some of these older stones here. And usually when you see, I believe that's a lamb on that usually is symbolic of that as a child. That was one of the things that they did back then. Some unique stones. Don't always see these every day. I am sorry, like I just sort of off today. Like I'm feeling reasonably well, but I've been having issues with my breathing and stuff like that with this stuff with the breathing in all that grass from earlier in this season, which normally, like in fall, I do pretty well with being able to breathe a lot easier, but I just been having a lot of struggles with that. And so I'm not feeling terribly great, haven't been sleeping great, but I want to try to get some more content out there and just show you some more pretty cool, unique places and talk about historical figures. Like I said, I will come back at some point. I like to reasonably soon come back again and talk about Jacob Albright and do a much more involved video about everything to have to do with him. I'd like to find where this George Becker place is, but I do believe one thing, that it's probably residential, because I tried to film earlier at Mitcher's brewery, or what had been Mitcher's Brewery, and sort of an awkward place to film because it is private property, so you got to be a little careful with what you do, and they have no trespassing signs. There were a couple people there cleaning up the property, but like I said, I forgot a couple materials, so it's sort of hard to do your research off the phone. I mean, you can get some information, but if your brain's not going right and you're pretty tired, you just sort of struggle with trying to retain the information you need to talk about things. So I do apologize. I do want to try to do a video later today on the Isaac Meyer homestead, and also when I go back into Schaeferstown, I want to do one on the Schaeferstown Water Company, talk about that, because both of those I researched pretty well. We're not going to go over on that side because that's all newer, but here it is. It says Albright Memorial Chapel is built in 1850 in memory of Jacob Albright, founder of the Evangelical Association. It is sort of sad sometimes, like John Walter is not mentioned, and he was really, really instrumental in being along. He was a co-laborer with Jacob Albright, and a lot of times he does get forgotten, and there really is there's not near as much information. And he also lived a very short life. I believe he only lived till 37, which Jacob Albright only lived till 49, but he was probably the more influential of the two, and definitely the more recognized. Quite a hornet's nest up there, but this is a neat old building. Let's take a peek inside here. They do have pews in there and everything. That's pretty neat. I don't know how much you guys can see in there, but there are pews all right, cool. With that, we're gonna sign off, and then we're gonna go back to Schaeferstown. I'm glad we were able to find this at least. This is to some degree an exploratory mission for the future video that'll have a lot more information. But all right, everybody, thank you, and we will see you in a bit. See you about town.